playing with the Ouija board. It started to move on its own, and everybody was giggling and laughing. Then we started asking it some pretty stupid questions, as you can imagine. And the board just lifted up and flew against a wall. So that was it. You know, everybody was screaming and pretty freaked out at that point, and we broke it in half and stuffed it in the garbage outside.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you all for joining us, and special thank you goes out to all of you who continue to support the podcast and continue to spread the word. Always remember, if any of you out there have experiences of your own that you'd like to share, feel free to email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and you too could be a guest on the show. We've got a fantastic show ready for you guys today. I know this has been a great discussion. I've talked to today's guest at length yesterday, and we went through so much of what she was experiencing, and she agreed to come on the show and talk about it now. So hope you guys are all ready. This is going to get epic. So welcome to the show, Vicky. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me, Brent.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. And you know, you and I have been trading emails back and forth for a while now, but in hearing your experiences, it's just pretty intense stuff. So, in order for us to kind of dive into it, can you give me an idea, where did this all start for you?
Well, the first experience I can remember, I was in second grade because we had just moved into a house from an apartment. And it was a two-family house, so it was the same entrance coming in, but one went straight that went upstairs to the apartment, and one went to the left that went into our house.
Okay.
And the door was open, and me and my sister and my mom were sitting on the couch watching TV, and there was a huge ball of light that came. I don't know how huge. At the age I was, it seemed huge. Uh-huh. It came down the steps and turned and came into the living room, and it just smashed into the wall behind the couch where we were all sitting.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Did everybody...
And nobody really said anything. We were just kind of, confused.
Oh, so everybody did witness this, though, right?
Yes, all three of us saw it.
Wow, that is really intense. Okay. So what happens next?
There was that house was built in 1907, so it was an old house, and this was probably 1980. And in the basement, it was a 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom house.
Okay.
In the main living area, there was one bathroom that just had a tub in it. In the basement, there was another separate room that was like used for storing canning, whatever you would can, vegetables or whatever. And in that room, there was a concrete formed shower. Mm. And then you just on 3 walls, and then you would have your shower curtain. Okay. And the floor was concrete, and we would stand on a pallet to take a shower. Oh, and my sister and I were both. We didn't like going down there, so we would go down there together and keep each other company, while we showered. And we kept talking, the entire time because it was just so creepy down there. Yeah. And one time I was taking a shower, and a hand grabbed my shoulder. And I, turned around and, yelled, and that was the only time I've ever been touched. Wow. But, and then, of course, that was the only place we could shower, so we had to keep going down there.
Yeah, that's so horrible. I actually had an experience in the shower, too, and it's, I don't know what it is about being in a shower and having those things happen, but, God, it's creepy.
Because you're naked, that's why. You have nothing.
That's true, yeah. There's an extra vulnerability there, I suppose, right?
Right. So, and then in that house, all the time, we would hear a baby crying. Now, this experience, the shower, the ball of light, and this baby crying, my sister heard all these things as well, and she's only a year older than me.
Okay.
So we were basically the same age. So all the time there would be like a baby crying, and you didn't know where it was. It wasn't specific to any room. It could be anywhere at any time. It wasn't just like at night or anything like that.
Mm.
And, I don't know what, I don't know why or anything. I'm working on getting the abstract for that house, so maybe I can start doing some more research on that house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but it was, just all the time. So then we would have, like slumber parties, and one time we decided to play with a Ouija board.
Uh-oh.
And, yeah, and, we were probably 14, 15, and since my sister and I were so close in age, we had, like, the same friends.
Mm-hmm.
So we had all our friends over, and we were playing with the Ouija board, and it started to move on its own, and everybody was giggling and laughing and thought it was pretty funny, and, then we started asking it some pretty stupid questions, as you can imagine, and the board just lifted up and flew against a wall.
Oh, my God. Wow.
So that was it. Everybody was screaming and pretty freaked out at that point, and we broke it in half and stuffed it in the garbage outside.
Yeah, probably. I can't blame you much for that.
Right. So, that was it for the Ouija board when we were kids.
Yeah. Wow.
And then the experiences kind of stopped for a while until, then I moved out of the house. But then when my son was born, my ex-husband and I moved back into that house and lived with my mom. Actually, I should back up. So when my dad died when I was 16.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So we had, for months leading up to his death, every night I would, not every night, at least a couple times a week, I would dream about that he died and being at the hospital and the funeral and, all the steps that happen.
Sure. Wow.
With a death and a funeral. And I never shared that with anyone, except you.
Right.
And he died, and everything was exactly as it was in my dream.
Wow.
And at that point, I'm only 16, so I don't have any real experience with funerals and death and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But everything was exactly as I had dreamed it for all those months.
That's a lot of heavy stuff.
Well, then,
yeah.
Well, then, probably a month or so after he had died, I had a dream that I was in the, they called it the resource center at my high school. It was basically the library.
Okay.
And I was down there, and somebody had delivered some flowers and put them on the counter. And I can still see it. It was a vase full of pink carnations.
Mm-hmm.
And the librarian brought them to where I was sitting, and there was a card, and it just said, "Love, Dad."
Wow. Okay.
And that was the last time I ever dreamed about my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see him. I just saw the flowers. And this was a man who I cannot remember one time in my life he told me he loved me.
Okay. Seems very, very like, I guess, was it a cathartic thing for you, for that, or was it just odd to you?
I think at the time it was, because the dream was, obviously it was very real.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, at least that's something. I remember thinking, well, that's
right.
At this point, he's dead. That's the most I'm ever going to get.
But it was more than he gave in life. So I guess that's good. Yeah. That's tragic though. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like I told you last night, I come from a huge trauma background.
Right. Yeah.
But, my childhood up until I was about 28 was lots of trauma.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So that was when I was 16. When I was 20, I was married to my first husband, and we needed to move back in with my mom in that same house.
Oh, okay.
My mom was not a person who was capable of taking care of herself.
Oh, okay.
So me and my ex-husband and my 18-month-old son moved back into the house. And I think we wound up living there just about a year only. But in the bedroom, my sister and I, when we were kids, we shared a bedroom most of our lives until we were teenagers. Then I moved upstairs to the to the apartment, and she moved into the basement.
Oh, okay.
So our bedroom that we shared on the main floor, that was my son's bedroom. Oh. And he would go in there and sit and play, and he was always talking to someone. And I would ask him who he was talking to, and he always said he was talking to Lisa. Now, I don't know who Lisa is. Like I said, I'm going to try to get the abstract now. But, and he would be in there talking, and the little toys he was playing with, they would move around on the floor.
By themselves?
And the curtains, yeah, by themselves.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
And the curtains would move, when you, they were very light curtains. Like if you walk past a curtain and it just kind of billows a little bit.
Sure.
And, obviously the window wasn't open or anything, but, he was always playing with Lisa, and the toys were moving, and the curtains would move, and
did this, just as a curiosity, did it continue to develop, or did he outgrow that, or whatever ended up happening with that situation? Just maybe because you moved out?
Yeah, he doesn't really, unless he doesn't talk to me about it. Well, he's 31 now. Okay. But he doesn't really, he definitely believes, but like I had told you before, this has been such a huge part of my life, my entire life, that I can remember.
Yeah.
But I've always known it's there, and I've tried just to okay, that happened, move on, don't think about it.
Right.
And I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, I don't need to live like this, so
sure.
And with help from a mutual friend, so
right. Yeah. Well, I'm just curious, because sometimes those quote unquote imaginary friends, which seem very much to be an actual spiritual intelligence, sometimes they really go bad. Other times they just seem like part of the life, and they're more incidental. But I was just curious, did it progress, or did it get worse or better, or was it just kind of this thing that was happening?
It just kind of seemed to be the same.
Okay. Well, that's good. If they're going to have that kind of connection, it's definitely one where you don't want them to start, speaking in tongues or something.
No, and you know what? This just occurred to me when we were talking about this. I had forgotten all about this. One night he was sleeping in there, and he was in a little red toddler bed. Remember the movie, when the movie Cars first came out? Oh, sure. The Lightning McQueen. Yes, it was the red Lightning McQueen bed. Okay. And he woke up and he was crying. And I went in there, and there were a bunch of toys piled on his bed. And right when I walked in there, like a Matchbox car flew against the wall right behind his bed and landed on him. Oh, wow. How did I forget that? I just don't even know. Well, I think you've got a lot to remember, quite honestly, and in fairness. And, when you have a lot of situations happen,
it's, not unusual to forget a bunch of them just because they keep happening. So I don't fault you at all for that.
Right. And like I said, I've just started delving into this whole thing. So
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. I'm surprised that had jumped out of my head.
Well, it's an interesting point, but did you get the feeling that it was taunting the child, or just it just happened to hit in the area of him? I mean, did you get a feeling of danger when that happened, or was it just like, well, that's not good, or what was your takeaway?
I remember thinking I have to get him out of that room.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see.
But also, at the same time, my life was so much turmoil that it was just one thing on top of the normal turmoil.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. Because it's like you're in a state of triage where it's just, you got to take care of the biggest wounds first and try to work your way through it, like a crisis nurse or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So that makes perfect sense.
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry, Brent. I'm just kind of.
Oh, don't apologize at all. Just take your time. This is, it's no small thing, any of this stuff that you've experienced, and on top of having a tragic life during this time as well is double tough. So, don't feel any pressure. I'm just excited that you're here sharing what you did experience, because not only for, that I think that when people talk about it, it's a healing thing, but it also helps other people out there that may be listening and dealing with their own things. And so, don't ever apologize. Just take your time.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had a life like this and has not had an outlet to talk about what's gone on,
No, absolutely. In fact, I have people contact me all the time, and after we record, they're like, wow, I've never talked about that. And this is, it's really neat to be able to be a part of that process for me. Like, I'm truly honored by it. And I hope that in some ways this show can help people as well. And I hope it does. I hope it helps you and to help come to terms with all of these things.
Well, like I told you when we were talking, that the way I found your podcast, and I knew right away that, I don't know, maybe it's because we're both Minnesotans, but
true.
We're Minnesota nice.
Yeah, exactly. But, I think it's great. So, yeah, by all means, take all the time you need, and we'll get through this.
There's a lot of Native Americans here, so I'm very curious to find out what this land was before it was a development. Okay, so that was, I must have been about 21 or 22 when we left that house, because my daughter wasn't born yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so then there was really nothing. There was that gap for about 8 or 9 years, where I don't before I could say nothing happened, but now after this revelation, I'm thinking maybe I just don't remember something happening.
Okay. Well, that's possible. It's also possible that so much of that activity was anchored in that house, that there was something really big going on there. Yeah.
Well, we're just getting started.
Take us away.
So I wound up getting divorced from my ex-husband, and eventually I married my current husband, and he had a house in, like the next town over from where I lived, and that house was built in 1954. Mm-hmm. And I actually do have the abstract of that house, but I haven't really looked at it. So this is I think in some parts of the country they call them, it's not like it is a development. It was built for mining company employees.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Where they would put a whole, I think in my little development, I think there's probably about 50 houses on 5 or 6 streets. Mm-hmm. And the entire development was built in, I think it was like 7 or 9 months.
Wow. And
there were 2 different models of house you could have. And you lived right there, and there was the company store, and, you know, you're very close to the mining property. Mm-hmm. So I move into this house with my 2 kids, and everything was, you know, pretty quiet at first, but my daughter she has told me that she would get up at night and she would see standing, we had a quilt rack in the living room it was a modified bay window, and she said she would see my husband standing there looking out that window, but he was asleep. So my daughter's had very many experiences like I have.
Sure, yeah.
And I can't remember if she told me at the time or she didn't tell me until she was an adult. And I think it was when she was an adult because eventually, there was just funny things there. Like you would always hear constant footsteps. There was all the time footsteps everywhere. Oh. And like, and there's nobody around. And my husband worked out of town a lot at that time.
Okay.
And so he would be gone for a week at a time. And there was all the time footsteps. And you would think that the dogs were running around the house, but they weren't. They were still.
Wow.
And so that just kind of was like, it felt like it was almost a daily occurrence.
Okay.
And I think it's just something we got used to.
Yeah.
I can't really be sure, but there was still, it was still pretty much a lot of turmoil in my life then because I was dealing with a lot of things with my ex-husband. And he wound up going to jail a few times even after I left him, he wound up going to jail a few times for domestic assault and one he decided to commit on the courthouse steps, which was
oh my gosh,
very classy of him. But yeah,
very classy.
So and I guess my entire life I kind of feel like and maybe this is classic, abuse mindset. Sure. I felt like I'm the one who's brought this on. Mm-hmm. These experiences, like, if I'm doing something to cause this to happen, yeah. and I think maybe that's why I didn't really want to look too close into it.
Right. Meaning the spiritual stuff, though, right? Not the abuse.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The spiritual stuff, because you get that when you're in abusive relationships, you get that. Yeah. Your fault kind of thing.
Sure.
So when oh my gosh, Brent, since we talked, I have just done so much writing and thinking, and it's when I was a kid, I was very accident prone.
Oh, okay.
And I was always getting hurt. And I mean, like stitches and things like that. And my mom told me that I was accident prone because God knew I was worthless.
Oh, dear God. Wow.
So,
that's so tragic.
And like I told you last night, I was raised Catholic. So I was at Mass 3 times a week the whole time I was growing up.
Wow. I'm so sorry that was your experience. Wow. That's so tragic. I'm so sorry that's how you grew up. Wow.
Thank you. But and I only tell you that just to give you a little bit of insight into what my mindset has been.
No, I get it.
You know. So, okay, so back to this house. Okay, eventually the kids move out, and we built we remodeled the house like one room at a time, and we built a family room in the basement. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big reader, and my husband built me, you know, like bookcases and stuff like that with the intent that I would go down there and do my read, and I like to write, and do my reading and writing down there in a comfortable space. You know, it was wonderful, a fireplace and TV, everything.
Nice.
So I would go down there, but every time I was down there, all I could hear from upstairs was the footsteps and the running around and everything. So then I would go up to see what was going on, because my husband had been hurt in 2011 and had a bunch of surgeries. So he was recovering from surgery for a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And so I would go up there to see if he needed something, and everybody would be sound asleep. The dogs, my husband, there's no one else in the house.
Wow.
And then one time I was down there, and I heard what I thought was him walk into the kitchen, let the dog out, and I heard him cough a couple times and get ice out of the ice machine.
Okay.
In the refrigerator. And I yelled up, "Do you need something?" And he didn't answer me, so I went up there, and the house was completely black and dark. Everybody was asleep.
Did it sound like his cough, or did it sound like just a man coughing? So it's a mimic.
Yeah, no.
Okay. So it's a mimicking.
Yeah, no, I was. Yes, and like I said, my daughter, when she would see him standing at the window, she swore it was him, but he was sound asleep or out of town.
And it was always him, though, huh, that people were seeing? Like you were hearing and she saw, but it was always him that they were seeing?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Huh.
Yeah, it is interesting. I never really thought about it.
Yeah, there's a phenomenon called the doppelganger phenomena, where, you know, and there's many stories out there of people that are, you know, alive and well, but suddenly they're in places they shouldn't be, and people see them, and then they disappear, and sure enough, they're in the other room. They were never in that area, and it's a very strange phenomenon. I'm not sure exactly what it means, if it's an intelligent thing or if it's just some oddity, energetic projection of some kind, or maybe a psychic imprint of some kind. It's just very strange. And you being sensitive, and your daughter as well, you know, it doesn't surprise me if that is the case, if you guys picked up on that energy and were able to perceive it. Huh.
That is strange, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it is always him, yes.
That's very curious. Okay. Yeah.
Huh.
Very interesting.
Okay, so, oh boy. And also at my house, I am famous for hating little sounds.
Oh, okay.
Somebody clicking a pen, tapping their fingers, any kind of little sound, because my entire life I have had knocking and tapping and constant noise all around me, just like, you know, I don't even know how to describe it, like the clicking of a pen, or like a tap or a knock, or stuff like that. So when somebody starts to click a pen around me or do something like that, I'm always stop it. Stop the tapping, stop anything like that, because I get it constantly.
Oh, okay.
And you know, our friend that I told you I had talked to, she said, just say, when that happens, just say, yes, I get it, I see you, thank you, leave me alone, you know?
Right.
Or whatever stuff. And I have started doing that.
Is that helping?
And I can't say it's helped yet,
Okay.
but maybe I need to practice more. I don't know.
Yeah, the claiming of the space thing is I think really powerful, because it's you saying what you're okay with, what you're not okay with, and as I emailed you a little bit earlier, it's like over 90% of hauntings and problematic spiritual things, they stop as soon as people say, "Hey, wait, enough, stop. This is not okay." And because I think generally speaking, spirits just want to be acknowledged for the most part. Like they're part of this space, and it's probably kind of maddening to be existing there, but yet everyone doesn't acknowledge or pay any attention to them at all. So maybe they want, like, "Hey, I'm here." And by acknowledging that, it's, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's something psychological, because I think it sounds weird to, talk about psychology in terms of spirits, but if these were indeed, formerly human spirits, and maybe even not human spirits, we still have a psychology. The only difference between a ghost and a person is skin. We're still that same personality underneath it all. So, the things that drive people nuts drive them nuts, and the things that people don't like to tolerate, maybe they don't like to tolerate. And so I think that by claiming the space is really a powerful way to say, "Hey, look, this is where I am, and this is what I'm okay with. If you're not, then you need to go."
And that is something that I need to practice, and like I said, this is just the very, very beginning of my journey.
Yeah.
With that aspect.
Yeah, I understand completely.
Like kind of trying to reclaim my power and just leave me be for a while.
Yeah. And it's a lifelong journey for all of us, I think. But, given your circumstances and what you've lived through, that's, it's an extra hard journey for those that have been through so much. And so, you're doing great for what it's worth.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That means a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's powerful stuff, But these phenomena is very strange. I was thinking about the house, being that it was a mining community and where you are, and I wonder if there were any tragedies or accidents that happened in that area that might have contributed to the amount of spiritual energy there.
And that's kind of something that I'm starting to look into. Like I told you, I have this project in mind, and I am in. There's a lot of Native Americans here,
mm-hmm.
and I am trying to find information on what this property was before, because
sure.
The mining companies, they just come in and they clear everybody out, and they're still doing it to this day. They're in my area. You basically, when you buy a house in this area, you sign a contract saying that if the mine wants it, they get it.
Wow. Okay.
So when they decide to expand, they have to pay you fair market value. But if you don't want to sign and sell your house, you're getting out of your house regardless.
Oh, wow.
So I'm very curious to find out what this land was before it was a development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even not so much if it was a farm the day before they bought out the farmer, but even further back than that.
Right. That is curious, because I'm sure that, let's say it was perhaps a sacred space to the First Nations community there, and they were forced off of it so that, the mining could happen. Well, that would create a lot of bad blood and a lot of bad thoughts and energy.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is open pit mining, so they basically just dig a big hole in the ground and keep digging it wider and wider and wider. I had a mirror that I had hanging on one of the walls, and I would come in and the mirror's on the floor, and I thought, okay, it fell off the wall. I put a bigger nail in. Then the next day, it was off the wall, and it was moved about 3 feet to the left. In 2001, my father-in-law passed away from cancer.
Oh, dear.
And he had been in remission for 7 years, and it came back very hard. It's a kind of lymphoma.
Oh, no.
And what they used to call bone marrow cancer.
Right.
And he was, over Christmas, he was in the hospital, and he got well enough to leave the hospital. And he went home, and my mother-in-law had called me, and she said that my father-in-law wanted me to come over and have lunch with him. So I went to her house, and they sat me down and told me that he had decided to quit taking any kind of medication, and he wanted to just go out on his terms. And he basically just did everything the hospital said so he could leave the hospital, and he was never going back.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So at the time, my husband was working out of town, so I called him, and the company flew him home. And all the family got together, of course, and everyone was there. And my father-in-law hung on for 2 weeks. They told him it could be 2 days. The hospice nurse told us it could be 2 days to 2 weeks until he died.
Oh,
and he hung on exactly 2 weeks.
Oh.
And he did not die peacefully. It was very brutal.
Oh.
And people don't just close their eyes and go to sleep and never wake up, in my experience.
Oh, okay.
So it was very, very traumatic for all of us. So the day after he died, we had been staying at their house, and we went home. They're only a few miles from us, and we had gone home. And the next morning, I got up, and I was making coffee, and I saw a mourning dove on my power line over my driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that's really strange, because where I live, we don't have doves.
Oh, wow.
And in my neighborhood, we don't even get pigeons, Back then, we didn't. Now they've started to come in. But so there was one, and I was making coffee and looking out the window, and more mourning doves started coming to this power line. And then they started landing in the yard. And you could hear their cooing. They were very noisy cooing. And I told my husband, I said, you have to come and see this. So he didn't even know what kind of birds they were. And I said, those are mourning doves. And that started my whole rabbit hole into the spirit medicine, animal spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And they stayed. We went out in the yard, and they stayed there. And they just kind of hung out and kept cooing. And they came every day for about a week. About a week or a week and a half. And then they left, and they haven't been back.
So you think that was a sign then, yeah?
When it was happening, I just thought it was so strange that why are these birds not afraid of us?
Right.
And why are they here all of a sudden? And I was like, so I started looking at mourning doves, because I thought, this was in January.
Oh, wow. That is unusual.
That he passed away, and I thought, they can't be migrating. So I started looking at mourning doves, and my research brought me to animal spirit website.
Okay.
So that's how, because before that I didn't know, I had never even heard of it.
Yeah.
And so then I started looking up, the mourning dove, meaning a message from a loved one. And
That's
whatever. And since then, I really started doing the animal medicine, and it has been the most profound spirituality in my life.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I think that's a beautiful symbol, and I think it can be very profound, because I think inspiration, answers from prayers, I think it can manifest in many ways for different people. And certainly, I think there is something to the medicine cards and the medicine animals. And I think they can be very powerful representations of, some kind of message that you're receiving from the divine or loved ones or whatever. I think that's really cool.
And, the animal stuff was much easier for me to embrace because I've always been a huge animal person.
Oh, sure.
And the spiritual, the paranormal stuff I was always pushing out of my head, because being raised Catholic, anything paranormal is evil.
Right. Yeah.
So I was so afraid to even acknowledge that was happening for so long. But, like I told you before, I was asked to leave the Catholic Church, and that's probably the biggest favor anyone's ever done for me.
Oh, okay.
When the priest, I went up to get communion, and the priest told me, "You have to leave this line."
Oh, that's so horrible.
So, yeah. Well, but it was probably the biggest favor anyone ever did for me.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Because there's a difference between religion and spirituality.
Yeah, I would agree. It's nice when they're both, when somebody can embody both of those, but a lot of times religion is a practice of the weak, and spirituality, not the weak meaning the less strong. I mean of a weak,
right. Like
you have religious days and then you have every other day. And of course, spirituality is a way of living, that embraces the spiritual and the divine, and it's great when those can be, married together in a person, and, you embody both, but, to each their own.
Yeah, exactly. And I think religion doesn't get you to a higher state of consciousness, but spirituality does.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that's just my opinion, because that's how you live. You can be Catholic and be very spiritual and walk the walk.
Right.
But in my experience, I have not seen that with any organized religion.
Okay. And that's great. I mean, I agree that it's different for everybody, of course, but everybody has their own path, and you got to find your way to your spirituality. And so for some people that is manifest in a religion, and they're able to express that in their religion of choice. But for other people, they don't fit into those normal boxes. So you got to find out where you do, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. And some people it takes longer, like me, I guess.
Well, I don't think it's a race. It's not a race. Whenever you get there is good.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, thank you. So in 2005, we bought a lake place from my husband's parents.
Okay.
And they bought it from my mother-in-law's parents. It's a little log cabin that's been added onto on a private lake, which means there's no public access. So everybody on the lake belongs on the lake.
Okay.
But it's a very populated lake, and it's not remote at all. I'm on a paved road. My neighbors, I can see their places where it's like living in another neighborhood just on a lake.
Oh, okay.
My neighbor on one side of me died. Maybe two years after I bought the place.
Oh, I see.
And his place stayed empty for 10 years.
Oh, wow. That's quite a long time.
And
okay.
he had one of these, he had a bell on the outside of his house. Mm-hmm. So if he was outside and the phone rang, it would ring outside and he would know his phone was ringing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So maybe he died and the phone would ring all the time. Okay, fine, whatever. But after a couple years and the phone was ringing all the time, my daughter was up here with me and we're like, you know what, we're just going to go over there and we're going to figure out where that phone's plugged in and we're going to unplug it because it would ring all the time.
Sure.
So we broke into the neighbor's house and we found all the phone jacks we could find. We unplugged everything. Uh-huh. And I mean, this place was abandoned.
Oh, no.
And I don't know who was paying the phone bill, but we went over there and we unplugged every single phone jack we could unplug. And then the phone would still keep ringing for, I don't know, maybe another whole summer. It would ring, but it eventually stopped.
Well, that's good.
But yeah, Jeez. But it would just drive us nuts. So, and I would think that might be the first
That's pretty
inkling up here.
Yeah. I think that's pretty powerful though, because, now do you know, did they discontinue the phone service after his passing or was it still
yes.
being?
So, yes.
Oh, okay. So I wasn't clear on that.
I know that.
Okay. Gotcha.
No, I know that now because my neighbor on the other side of that place bought his place. After 10 years, it was vacant.
Oh.
And no bills had been paid. There was no power over there. There was nothing. And the place actually just went for the back taxes.
No kidding.
So he was able to buy that whole place for just the back taxes.
But his phone continued to ring.
Wow. His phone continued to ring.
Wow.
And I mean, I actually find that one really funny because we were just fed up one night. And I told my daughter, I said, all right, we're going to go over there. I don't care what happens. We're going to make sure this phone stops ringing. It was like noise pollution all the time.
For the record, the Paranormal Portal does not endorse breaking into your neighbors' houses.
I know. I wouldn't normally do it. I didn't steal anything. So then there used to be a little gas station up here that rented movies. And I do not watch horror movies.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah.
My daughter wanted to watch. It was right when the first Paranormal Activity movie came out.
Oh, okay.
And she was dying to see this movie. So she was in high school, so I let her rent it. And it was just me and her at the lake, and we were going to watch Paranormal Activity. So we put it in, so we're starting to watch it. And I still have never seen this movie.
Oh.
Every time something scary was going to happen, the movie would blank out. It would be nothing but static. There was nothing. And we kept trying to start it and restart it. And so eventually we're like, okay, we just got a bad copy. And I told her the next day we'll go back to this gas station and get another copy of this movie and tell them it didn't work. Uh-huh. So we went and got it again. And the exact same thing happened. You could watch everything except the scary part.
Wow. Somebody is... That's kind of cool, though, because it's like somebody's like, no, this isn't good. They're not going to let this happen. That's a kind of good presence to have around, I think. Right.
It was like the universe was saying, you don't need to see this.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty powerful.
So I still have never seen that movie. And I'm not, and I won't,
Actually, I think you actually have, except you lived it.
Yeah, right.
I think you have seen that movie as it works out.
Oh my goodness. So then, I'll just maybe another time we can get into the whole car accident thing.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's such a long one, but I would come up here, and I live up here in the summertime.
Okay.
Up here, meaning I'm at the lake right now.
Right.
So I live up here in the summertime, and I would come home, come to the lake, and I would go, I have a long screen porch. It's about 20 feet long by about 12 feet deep.
Okay.
And it's all screened in, and it faces the lake.
Nice.
So I sit there, and I watch the wildlife. I do my thing out there. It's very peaceful and relaxing. So there was one summer, every time I came up here, the furniture in the screen porch was moved. I had 3 chairs, like those elderbrush chairs, where you get the wood wet and you bend it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I had 3 of those out there, and every time I would come here, they'd be in a different position, moved completely around.
Oh.
Now, like I said, the neighbor on the one side of me is dead.
Okay.
And his place is abandoned. The neighbor on the other side of me, they live 4 hours away, so they're up very seldom.
Okay.
So, and nobody had kids, nobody was messing around in my place. I know that.
Oh.
So the furniture is moved. I would come and put the furniture back. Yeah. And then there was I had a mirror that I had hanging on one of the walls. Mm-hmm. And I would come in, and the mirror, first the mirror's on the floor, and I thought, okay, it fell off the wall, whatever.
Sure.
I put a bigger nail in, nailed the mirror back up. Then the next day, it was off the wall, and it was moved about 3 feet to the left.
Oh, well, that's not right. That shouldn't happen.
Right. Yeah. So I put the mirror back up again.
Oh.
And then another day I come up here, and it's completely on the other end of the screen porch. Oh,
wow. Yeah.
So then I just said, okay, no more mirror. It's done.
Okay. That's
I have things that go missing all the time. Mm-hmm. My remote control, I always keep it in the same place. I'm very, very organized.
Okay.
And I keep my remote control in the same place. And I had just had it, and I went outside for something. I came back in, and it was gone.
Oh.
And I'm looking all over the place for it. I tore the whole cabin apart. I pulled the mattress off the bed. This remote is no place to be found. So, and then it was time to go to sleep. So I went to bed, and the next morning I woke up, and the remote control was exactly where I always leave it.
Oh, it's kind of mischievous then, yeah?
Yeah, so then it's, then it's back.
Okay.
There is a bird here. It's a blackbird. Probably about the size of a crow.
Okay.
And I was sitting in the screen porch one night and reading, and I heard something moving, and I looked up, and this bird was in the screen porch, and it flew right into the wall behind me and, vaporized. I don't know what kind of word to use, but it disappeared into the wall.
Oh, wow.
So I told my husband about it, and he was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. It was probably a bat. And I said, no, I know the difference between a bird and a bat. Sure. And it was not that.
Okay.
My daughter I think she was on the screen porch or in the cabin, or she saw the same bird, and it reacted, and it behaved the same way.
Oh, wow.
Just this phantom bird.
Huh.
So that was, those were maybe a year apart. Last summer, I was up here by myself, and I have French doors that lead from you could probably see in that picture I sent you, the French doors that lead from the living room onto the screen porch.
Yeah.
And I opened up those doors to go on the screen porch, and I remember I was wearing a gray sweatshirt, and that bird flew right straight into my stomach.
Into you?
Into me, and I felt it, and I lifted up my sweatshirt, and I had a red mark on my stomach.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that really freaked me out.
Yeah, I think that would freak anybody out. It's like, yeah.
Right.
Wow. I don't know what to make of that. That's very strange. It's one of those, is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? I mean, it seems like it's kind of an odd thing anyway, or very weird, but, very weird. But it didn't hurt you, and you didn't have any issues as a result of it. So, I mean, it looks and sounds like an attack, but if you didn't have any negative impacts from it or any negative ramifications, then maybe it's something else. Maybe it's just trying to freak you out or something. I don't know. That's very strange. Well,
when I had talked to this mutual friend of ours, she said to me, she said, "Is there a bird?" Oh. And I said, maybe, maybe. And she said, "That bird is your grandmother."
Oh.
And okay. I said, okay. And she said, your father's mother. And she wants you to know that you have more in common than you think. Now, she died when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. Oh. And I only have a couple memories of her. But she got divorced in the 20s. And her husband basically threw her out with 4 little kids.
Oh, no.
And back then, and she was from a very prominent family around here.
Okay.
But she was basically disowned by everybody because she caused her husband to throw her out.
Yeah, it was a different world then, for sure. That wasn't a...
It was.
Yeah, it was like social suicide to get divorced.
Right. Oh. But when she told me, she stays with you because you have more in common than you think.
Hmm.
And, like I said, when I spoke to her, I was just, all I was saying was, yeah.
Right.
And when she brought up the bird, that freaked me out more than the bird.
Okay.
But now I know. And she said that the bird comes around when you need to pay attention to something.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But she didn't say what I needed to pay attention to or what any of it meant, just that I need to pay attention to something.
Right. Wow.
And I didn't ask any questions. I just said, okay.
Right. That's very interesting. I guess, omens and such are powerful, and symbols are powerful, and you're I guess it kind of makes sense because of course you are, you're in tune with the animal kind of the animal energies and such, so that makes sense that that would be a symbolic manifestation, right?
Yeah, and I said, well, I had always thought that this has to be something that's scary because it's black.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, sure. That's
and
that's a lot of old thinking there, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It is old thinking, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean,
absolutely.
By that, I'm not putting you down. I mean, it's just the general, the old cowboy shows. The good guys wearing white hats, the bad guys wore black hats, and it's just that old, white is good, black is bad. It's an old manner of thinking about things, and it's not uncommon even today, that people just generally think, well, something's dark, that's scary, and maybe sometimes that's right, but I don't think that's universally so.
No, and you're right. It is. I know what you're talking about. It's old-fashioned thinking that black means death. When somebody dies, you wear black for mourning and you wear white for weddings. And
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. And that kind of freaked me out. And my daughter, is absolutely terrified of birds.
Oh, oh no. So it must
terrified
have been
of birds.
Really traumatic for her.
Yeah. Right, and they go after her. Birds will, literally, wild birds will attack her.
Huh.
Like nothing I've ever seen before. And it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And then for her to encounter this bird.
Right. Yeah, that's got to be really, really terrifying for her. And I'm sorry that's the experience she's had, especially with birds. But you gotta wonder what maybe there's some symbol in that for her too. Like maybe the birds are coming after her. Like, you're ignoring. There's a message in that somehow, it seems, but it's far beyond my means to decipher. But that's interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, mine too. I mean,
yeah,
I've never seen like a little domestic bird go after somebody.
I don't mean to laugh, but it is kind of funny. Wow, poor girl.
It is funny. And one time up here, we were at the cabin when she was a teenager, and she was just out in the yard, and this bird went after her, and she jumped in the car, and she was screaming. So I went up, and the bird was like, I mean, I have to laugh because it's so ridiculous. This bird was like literally landing on the car and pecking the windows.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
So I got in the car and I started driving away, and the bird like chased the car.
Yeah, you might want to give her a reading for that to find out what's going on.
I know. Have you ever? And we laugh about it because I've never, ever seen or heard of something as ridiculous as that.
Yeah, not outside of Hitchcock.
Right, yeah, right.
Oh, my
Hitchcock.
God. Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I tell you what, Kelly, I know, or Vicky, rather, I know we've got so much more ground that we can cover, but we're heading into an hour space now, but
Right.
I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing these amazing things. Your experiences, they're very profound, but I think there's kind of I don't know, maybe it's just me, but there's just it does seem to be like there's a lot of messages in here, and it seems like there's a lot to take away. It's not just the usual, freak you out, try to scare you kind of things. It's like almost a journey for you, and that's really kind of neat.
And that's kind of how I'm starting to feel about it now.
Oh, good. Okay.
Like I said, this is just the very beginning of my journey, and I'm determined to get what I can out of this, and in turn maybe help somebody else to just be like, it's okay, it's not, God doesn't think you're worthless. No, you know what I mean?
Absolutely right. And, I don't think there's any worthless people. It's just we're all in different places of our own personal journeys. But some people obviously have a lot of hills and valleys, and other people seem to have much more smooth rides. But no, your stories are really compelling and really powerful. And I thank you so much. I really appreciate that you came on the show, because I really believe that the more people that come forward and share, the more people out there are hearing and maybe will be willing to come forward themselves. Every time I hear somebody's experiences, I learn something. And so thank you so much for coming on the show.
And yeah, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. It means so much to me. And
all right, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on tonight's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please feel free to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, as well as finding us on Twitter. We're on Twitter at Paranormal Portal, PORTL, and we'd love to have you stop by our YouTube page and subscribe and check out our shows there. We got hundreds of shows, Journeys into the Paranormal Portal, so I hope you'll check it out, guys. We're over there at youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, so hope to see you guys soon. We'll be back, of course, for more podcasts in the coming days. So we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice, take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can.